So, in games like Destiny, the reason why I enjoy playing it is because it has a very complex build crafting system where you can go all the way super deep into your build, and even those small changes can change a lot overall. A single mod can affect how your entire build works. So that's why I really enjoy making builds in games like this. Now, I just finished getting all Masterworked Tier 5 armor, and this really let me use this build that I've been working on for a long time to the highest potential that it can be at. So I wanted to talk about this build in a video and just show it overall because this is a very fun to use and very good build. So this is a Strand Titan build that creates a lot of orbs of power, and because of your high health stat, if you're using this build, you, as long as you're picking up those orbs of power, you are very strong and very hard to kill. Plus, you get a lot of woven mail, which just gives you an extra overshield on top of that. That's very strong. And you might think, oh, if you're that hard to kill, then you're probably not doing a lot of damage. But with this maxed out melee stat, you are doing a lot of melee damage. Because the Strand melee is super strong, you have maxed melee, and it's also using Banner of War, which I'll explain kind of more what that does later if you don't know. But in short, it basically just makes your melee do a lot more damage than normal. Same thing with swords too. Now, this build, the main weapon it centers around, it's not the Navigator, but it's any Strand trace rifle, really. So basically just Navigator and Ribbon Tail. But if you, normally I like using the Navigator more, just because it gives you a lot more woven mail. But yeah, it's really just Strand trace rifles, but the Navigator is also really rare, and not even just so I could share it, but just me personally, I want to have more options than just having to use a Strand trace rifle, so I also made a alternate build that has the same base but slightly different, where it uses Monte Carlo instead. So if you don't have the Navigator or you don't want to use a Strand trace rifle, then I will have a timestamp where it talks about the weapons, the weapon and the artifact changes if you do use Monte Carlo. Because of that, though, I will be talking about the weapons and the artifact last, and I will be going over the build and the armor mods first, just so everything's more in order. But yeah, getting into the base build, it's Strand Titan. Obviously, super you can't change, melee you can't change. Jump and barricade are just personal preference. Me personally, I use strafe jump and rally barricade. For your grenade, really, I wouldn't recommend using threadling or grapple, but you can, between slice wire and shackle, you can use whatever you want. Personally, I'm using slice wire, but also this build does have some stuff to do with suspending targets, so if you did want to use shackle, that's also fine. I just like slice wire because it does more damage, and my grenade stat's kind of low for this build because the main stats I'm going for is health, melee, and weapons, so it recharges kind of slow for your grenade, and this does have a longer base cooldown. But that's also more personal preference just between slice wire and shackle. And then for your aspects, I went with Banner of War and Dragner's Lash. Dragner's Lash you need because the exotic for this build is Abeyant Leap. And Banner of War is always just kind of used for melee Strand Titan because it gives you that huge damage increase for melee and swords. If you really don't want to use Banner of War, then you can use Into the Fray. I used it for a little bit, but I would much rather use Banner of War. And Dragner's Lash, it also gives you 3 fragment slots too, which is just really good. If you don't know what Banner of War does, every time you defeat something with a melee attack, it gives you, it increases your melee and your sword damage, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, it heals nearby allies too. But it's mostly for that increase in melee and sword damage. And Dragoner's Lash, every time you use your barricade, it sends something out of that barricade. It says in the description, a ripple in reality that travels forward. But when it hits people, it suspends them in the air. Now, moving on to the fragments, I'm using Thread of Propagation, Thread of Wisdom, Thread of Transmutation, Thread of Binding, and Thread of Ascent. If you wanted to, you could change Thread of Binding. What Thread of Binding does is super final blows emit a suspending burst from the target. Now, you're not going to be using your super much because it has a 0 super stat. But I'm more so using it just for that plus 10 health, just to get the stats up even higher that I need. But if you really want to change it, if you're really not worried about health, you could change it to Thread of Warding, or you could change it to Thread of Generation. But it's not really a grenade focused build, so Thread of Generation isn't the best thing to choose. But yeah, I'm just going with Thread of Binding mostly for the plus 10 health. So yeah, that emits a suspending burst when you hit it with your super and it dies. Thread of Ascent is activating your grenade ability reloads your equipped weapon. That's mostly for just overall boss fight damage. You know, you can do a lot of damage, you're out of ammo, just throw your grenade. That grenade's going to do damage to the boss, and then your weapon's already reloaded for you to just go straight back into doing damage. Then, Thread of Transmutation. While you have Woven Mail, Weapon Final Blows create a tangle. You're going to be creating a lot of tangles because you're going to have a lot of Woven Mail with this build too. So just having those extra tangles do help with damage and a lot of stuff overall. Then, Thread of Wisdom. Defeating suspended targets creates an orb power. You're going to be getting a lot of suspended targets using this build, mostly because of Dragoner's Lash with Abeyant Leap as your legs. So you're going to be getting a lot of Orbs of Power too, which does help because you have a high health stat if you're running this build. So yeah. Then we have Thread of Propagation. Powered melee final blows grant your strand weapons unraveling rounds. That is just increasing your damage. But yeah, it's just increasing your damage. And you're going to be getting a lot of melee final blows too, because this is a melee focused build. So yeah, overall, this is all pretty good. It works together well. It's really melee focused. And yeah, it's just overall a really good way to set up your subclass. Now going on to the armor. For all these, you really can just put it however you want. Personally, I'm going for melee first, health second, weapons last for my main three. Then I'm trying to go for a tiny bit of class, but super doesn't really matter because you're going to be getting a lot of orbs anyway. So I guess really having, what was it called? Thread of Binding isn't that bad because you are going to be getting a lot of orbs for your super. But yeah, super I'm going for the lowest here. So starting off with the mods for the helmet, I'm going with Special Ammo Finder and Heavy Ammo Scout. I'm only going with the Scout for heavy ammo, really just because this build needs a sword for it, and swords, you don't really need ammo that much for swords. Normally they don't run out very quickly. Special Ammo Finder though, it really helps for that trace rifle because the trace rifle will run out of ammo quite quickly. And also I do need a scout mod for this one, so I have enough power to, or enough energy left to go for Strand Siphon, which Rapid Strand Weapon Final Blows create a Orb of Power. That's overall just helping a lot. You're gonna get even more Orbs of Power now, which is another big part of this build is Orbs of Power. So yeah, you're going to be getting a lot of those because you're going to be getting a lot of rapid final blows with your Strand Trace Rifle in your first slot. Then moving on to the arms, I have Focusing Strike and then 2 Heavy-Handeds. If you have 2 of the same mod, it increases just like how good the Orb of Power is, I'm pretty sure. Oh yeah, it says it right there. Increases the potency of generated orbs and reduces the duration on the cooldown. But Heavy-Handed, your powered melee final blows create orbs of power. It's a melee focus build. You're going to be getting a lot of those final blows with your melee. So you're just going to be getting a lot of orbs of power. I'll go back to Focusing Strike later because that does relate to another ability I have on my class item. So for your chest piece, I have no mods on it right now. That's just because normally I'm going to just put resistance mods, which those will change depending on what you're actually doing in the game. So I don't have any on right now. Normally I just put resistance mods and resistance mods only on my chest piece though. Then moving on to the legs, I have Weapons Front, Stacks on Stacks, and Insulation. Weapons Front, every time you get an Orb of Power, it gives you an armor charge, and you get a bonus to your weapon stat when you have an armor charge. So you're getting Orbs of Power, and you get armor charges from those Orbs of Power. And you're going to have a lot of armor charges already. But you're getting a bonus to your weapon stat, which makes you do overall more damage just by getting that. So just by picking up those orbs of power, which you're going to be making a lot of, you're getting higher weapon stat too. Then there's Stacks on Stacks. Picking up an orb of power grants you an additional stack of armor charge. So by having this, you're just getting more armor charge. You're getting even more armor charge from picking up orbs of power, which you're making a lot of, so you're just getting that character even stronger. And then Insulation reduces class ability cooldown each time you pick up an Orb of Power. So you're going to get even more class abilities, which goes around with this. And you might be thinking, if a lot of the build revolves around you getting your class ability, why don't you have a lot of class? Well, it's because the class is your class ability is already recharging extremely fast at only 40 seconds. So really, you're not going to need a super high class. And by stuff like this, Insulation, you're going to be getting that back even faster. Now, for the class item, I have 2 Reapers and Outreach. Reaper, shortly after using your class ability, your next weapon final blow will spawn orbs of power. So by using your class ability and then killing something with your weapon, you're getting orbs of power, and getting orbs of power give you energy for that class ability back. It just goes together. And then there's Outreach, which is what relates to Focusing Strike. Focusing Strike grants class ability energy when you cause damage with a powered melee. And Outreach reduces melee cooldown when you use your class ability. When you're using your class ability, you get melee, and when you use your melee, you're getting class ability. It's not very strong because it's a smaller mod, but they do go together. That it's just everything is helping each other out in this build in small ways, which ends up making it super strong. Alright, so my microphone glitched out a little bit, and, well, not my microphone, but the audio on the video glitched out a little bit. Basically what I was saying after that was, normally for the main build, what I normally use is the Navigator, and I use all of this, and I use Tablet of Ruin, but what I was saying is this is the part where I'm going over the weapons. If you want to skip ahead to the next timestamp, where I use Monte Carlo instead, and I make a build, well, I don't make a whole new build, but I change it a little bit to revolve around Monte Carlo instead, and I change the artifact from Tablet of Ruin to Implement of Curiosity, then you can go ahead. Sorry for the clip, but it just glitched out a little bit, so I had to change it. You're getting Woven Mail. You're doing damage with your Strand Trace Rifle. It's Navigator's overall just an absolutely amazing gun. And I don't even have the catalyst for it, and I'm not planning on getting it, because if I have to go back to Ghost of the Deep a single more time, I might jump out of a window. So moving on to your energy weapon, you can use really any weapon you want as long as it's primary. I know there's a lot of people that say there's nothing wrong with running double special, but normally when you run double special, you have more special ammo finder mods on your helmet. And I did actually originally I tried to run forbearance with this instead of Might Mini Tool, and it just did not work because I kept running out of ammo, and it was just really annoying to deal with. So I would say nothing you use in this slot will actually affect your character that much. So really just use whatever you want as long as it's a primary. Then for your power weapon, go with a sword. The sword I'm using right now is the Slammer. I have Eager Edge and Cold Steel on it. Eager Edge is just so I can just so I'm faster than my teammates, because I don't like being the farthest one behind. It's just really annoying to me for some reason. And Cold Steel, powered sword hits slow targets. Because this is a vortex frame, whenever I use my powered sword hit, it spins me around in a circle. So I'm hitting everything around me, and everything's just getting slowed from this. And it gives you more ammo for your sword too. So yeah, it's really just the sword is all. It's also getting a damage buff too from having Banner of War, as long as you keep that Banner of War up. Now, this is the one of the most important parts of the build is the artifact, which I'm using Tablet of Ruin. For my first two, I'm using Unraveling Orbs and Elemental Siphon. Elemental Siphon is rapid final blows with your kinetic weapon or a weapon matching your equipped super. Create an elemental pickup that matches your equipped super. Elemental pickups grant matching super energy when they are collected. So when you're killing people with your Strand Trace Rifle, then you're getting even more tangles, and those tangles, when you pick them up, it's not a lot, but it's still granting super energy. So even though you have 0 super, if you're using the same armor as me, you're still getting a lot of supers because of the amount of orbs of power you're getting, and because of Elemental Siphon. It comes back a little less fast with the other part of the build, but it's not really a noticeable difference. This does help out though. Not even because of the super, just because you're getting a lot more tangles. Then I have Unraveling Orbs, picking up an Orb of Power or a Tangle, which tangles come from this, and just other things. So, and you're getting a lot of Orbs of Power, so just, this is already sounding good. Grant Strand Weapons Unraveling Rounds. And your main weapon you're going to be using is your Strand Trace Rifle. So you're getting Unraveling Rounds basically all the time for whatever you're using in your main slot. Then there's Vile Weave. Targets hit by your tangles are severed. Reduce tangle cooldown by picking one up. So as long as you're picking up your tangles consistently, the cooldowns are not as long for your tangles, which does help. And targets hit by your tangles are severed. That is also helping. Getting severed is very useful, especially for a perk later on. Harsh Refractions, trace rifles do more damage to targets afflicted by their elemental debuffs matching their element type. So when the things are severed, oh, I forgot to mention, this is all your two perks. But yeah, when targets are severed, you're doing more damage to them with your trace rifle because that's a matching elemental debuff. Then for my last one, I have Gold from Lead. This is kind of a no-brainer. Picking special ammo has a chance to grant heavy ammo. That if you're picking up special ammo, which is even more common, the chance to get heavy ammo is just very helpful. That's just an overall really good perk if you're on Tablet of Ruin for any type of build. Then for my third perks, I have To Shreds. Dealing sustained damage to severed targets unravels them. Defeating a severed target creates a hotspot of strand energy, granting woven mail to nearby allies for a short duration. So targets are getting severed from Vile Weave, and then doing even more damage to them is going to drop a strand hotspot, which gives people woven mail. So everyone's just getting overall stronger very consistently by that woven mail, which doesn't just help you, but that helps your entire team. And then Horde Shuttle damaging unraveled targets, which also the unraveled targets comes from 2 shreds. Occasionally we'll spawn a threadling, which ends up just severing that target, which can go back 2 shreds. 2 shreds, which just all of these just work really good together, because one perk will lead to the next perk, and that leads to the next perk, and it just keeps going on, just all the way through. So yeah, that's the main build. Now, if you do want to switch to Monte Carlo, that's fine, but for that, we will, if you want to, this is where I would say if you don't want to use Banner of War, this is where you would swap to Into the Fray, because you are going to want to change your sword out for a Strand heavy weapon. Okay, now I changed my loadout a bit so I can show the new one with the Monte Carlo now. So you're going to keep the same stuff here. If you do want to swap Banner of War for Into the Fray, that's also fine. And yeah, that's about it. Everything else you can keep. Even if you do use the Monte Carlo build, you can still keep Banner of War just for that extra bonus. But I know Into the Fray also, destroying a Tangle will give you Woven Mail. So yeah, some people do like to use this over Banner of War. But literally everything else is the same. So getting into what it actually does, we're using Monte Carlo for the first slot. Catalyst you don't really need. I end up having it. It's not that important though. But dealing damage with this weapon reduces your melee cooldown and grants a chance to fully charge your melee ability with each kill, which is just really good for getting that melee back. It's pretty obvious why that would be good. You're getting even more melees, which you're already getting a ton of and are already doing a lot for you. Then for your energy weapons, just like before, it does not matter. If you're gonna use double primary though, with Monte Carlo, then I would recommend taking off this special ammo finder and replacing it for a heavy ammo finder, just so you can get even more heavy. But yeah, I'm gonna be using forbearance if I ever use this, so I'm gonna keep that on. Then for your power, or your heavy weapon, whatever you call it, it doesn't really matter that much as long as it's Strand, because if you don't use Strand, all those abilities that are giving your Strand weapons like extra stuff all just kind of falls out the window because you don't have a Strand weapon, because you can't get in your second slot and your first slot's taken up by Monte Carlo, which is kinetic. So yeah, I just have this as my adept cat. I have no idea how to say that, cataphract. But yeah, I have this as my power heavy, whatever. Then for the artifact, this one the reason I don't like the Monte Carlo build as much is really because the artifact, it's still good obviously, but I just think the Tablet of Ruin one is just better overall. But Implement of Curiosity is not bad by any means. So for the first perks, it's Elemental Benevolence. Granting allies an elemental buff gives class ability energy. Yeah, if your allies get Woven Mail or anything, you're going to be getting ability for your... Oh, you're going to be getting... Geez, you're going to be getting ability for your class... Oh my god, you're going to be getting energy for your class ability. Then Refresh Threads, picking up an elemental pickup, so any tangles. Oh, it even says, tangles while you have Strand Super. Grants energy to your least charged ability. You're just getting more energy for picking up your tangles, which you're already making. Dealing sustained precision damage against combatants while near 2 or more allies grants you damage resistance. So as long as you're playing with a team, if you're doing if you're just hitting your headshots by shooting someone, then you're going to get damage resistance. Then, stunning a champion with an elemental weapon creates an elementally aligned explosion, applying a matching elemental debuff to nearby targets. If there's an unstoppable champ and I hit it with forbearance, then there's going to be an arc explosion around. So yeah, it's just creating even more damage to people around. Then elemental coulsons. Defeating a target has the chance to create an elemental pickup matching your equipped super. You're just getting even more tangles now. So yeah, that goes along with this one, too, which is gives picking up a tangle will give energy to your least charged ability. So yeah. Then for the last two, picking up an elemental pickup or tangle grants increased damage to weapons of the same element. So you're going to be getting increased heavy damage. So yeah, and then while you have woven mail, which is what you're going to be having because you're running a Strand build, it recharges your melee faster and deals increased melee damage. So by having woven mail, which you're going to have a lot of, you're getting more increased melee damage. So yeah, that's about it for this part of the build. Yeah, overall, I would say I would rather use the Tablet of Ruin part, but it doesn't really matter what you use. It's just overall a really good build. And yeah, that's about it. Right now, I'm going to be showing some videos of me actually using it, so you can see kind of what it looks like. If you don't really care about that, then yeah, that's really the end of the video. Thank you for watching.